Hello there, my Sunbeams. It's me, Icarus, and thank you for 50 subscribers. It means so much to me that you have done that. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. That would be great. Anyways, let's go into the last chapter of And How Does That Make You Feel by Rosyredlipstick, which is on AO3. So you check out the fic after you're done, so you can give them kudos. And onto the fic. This is chapter 6 out of 6 of And How Does That Make You Feel by Rosyredlipstick on AO3. The summary is, this is pure cheese, I'm so sorry. Care to spare something sweet, neighbour? Other than yourself, obviously. Will grinned and leaned against the doorframe, staring down the other boy. How long have you been cooking that up? He teased, still blocking the doorway. Since I realised I was out of sugar, Nico grinned. It was good, wasn't it? Why didn't you use your key? Will chuckled. That's kind of why I gave you a key. Nico cocked his head to the side in faux confusion. I thought I had a key because I stole yours in the middle of the night and made a copy. Will waved his hand through the air. Same thing. Anyway, why don't you just barge in usual fashion? Nico grinned. But isn't this fun? Don't you like our snappy little conversations? Nico ducked under Will's arms and headed towards the kitchen. Now, Sugar Pea, where you're hiding the sweet stuff. Will laughed and swung the door shut before following him. Why do you need sugar again? I wasn't under the impression you cooked for yourself. Ever. Will made a sweeping gesture across the kitchen. It seems like all you do is eat out of my fridge and leave dirty dishes. Nico stuck his tongue out at him and turned back to glare at the freezer, where he was apparently looking for sugar. Hazel's visiting later and I want to make her cookies. Nico paused and held a finger up to his chin. And now I think about it, I may be out of chocolate chips too. Will nodded and began to dig through a cabinet as Nico spoke again. Maybe flour and eggs. Also butter? Or a working oven? Nico jumped up onto the counter next to Will. How about a whisk too? You need those to bake, right? Will stopped and turned to Nico slowly. Nico? Yes, Sugar Lips? Do you have any ingredients to make these cookies? Nico popped a chocolate chip into his mouth, giving Will a look that said, Well, what did you expect me to do? Will sighed but wasn't annoyed. What time is Hazel coming over? In a few hours. Nico plucked the measuring cup right out of Will's hand and began to measure out a cup of flour. That should be enough time, right? I've never actually made cookies. But the website said 45 minutes. It wasn't wrong, right? Will hummed and preheated the oven. That should be fine, he agreed. Why are you so set on making cookies anyway? Nico shrugged, and there was way more to the movement than he would like to admit. He kicked his heels against the cabinets and accepted the mixing bowl Will passed him. She likes cookies. Is that the only reason you're making cookies? Will peeked a look over at Nico while he began to mix the ingredients. Nico, he noticed, was eating more of the chocolate chips than he was putting in the mixing bowl. Nico shrugged and avoided Will's gaze. I guess it would be kind of cool if I could show her something I could do, you know? Get her to stop worrying about me so much. Will nodded. That's understandable. Does she worry a lot? Nico heaved a large sigh. Incredibly. She keeps trying to convince me to move with her and Frank to the camp or whatever. Which, no. And she, wants to meet you. Will paused for a moment. Me? He questioned, feeling a bit flattered. His hands froze over the egg carton before falling down slightly and resting on the eggs. Nico ducked his head quickly, but not fast enough to hide his flushing cheeks. Yeah, I've mentioned you a few times. Will bit his lip a little gleefully as he turned back to selecting the perfect eggs. Don't draw anything from that, Nico warned him. Just because I mentioned you to Hazel doesn't mean anything. Will hummed. I'll be drawing everything from that, Nico D'Angelo, and you know that. But if you'd like, I can pretend I won't be drawing anything from it. He shot Nico a bright smile. Look at me, not drawing anything from that statement. Nico clicked his tongue in a faux annoyance before flicking a chocolate chip at Will's forehead. One less chocolate chip for Hazel's cookies, he warned, and Nico rolled his eyes, but didn't throw any more chips. How's the new apartment coming along? Will licked a stray cookie dough off his wrist and glanced up at Nico. Nico stared at the pink of Will's lips and swallowed. Gods, I'm so lucky you're mine. Will's cheeks pinked, and he gave the other boy a coy smile. Yeah? Nico hopped off the counter and came up behind him. I mean, you make me food and treat me nice. He buried his nose into the crook of Will's neck. And you look like a literal Greek god, so that helps. You just want me for my body, Will declared. That is what's happening right now. I hope you know that. Nico's laugh shook against Will's body. I'm fine with that, he told Will, his voice still muffled by Will's shirt. Will grinned and rolled his shoulders. If you don't get off me, Hazel's cookies will never be baked. He swiped the mixing bowl from where Nico had left it and began to stir. Nico groaned before detaching himself and pushing himself back on the counter. Counters aren't for sitting, Will told him, not actually minding that Nico was in his apartment, using all of his ingredients and sitting on his counters. The only thing he truly minded was the fact his hands weren't all over the beauty of a boy in front of him. Nico rolled his eyes and didn't respond, only dipping his finger into the cup of sugar and observing it for a moment. I guess that makes you my sugar daddy, huh? He grinned, looking at the collected sweetness. Will choked back a laugh and had to set the bowl on the counter for a moment. Nico, you can't just say that. Nico repeated the gesture, dipping the tip of his finger into the sugar, sucking on it. Alright, sweet stuff, whatever you say. He thought for a moment, musing. Maybe that's what I'll introduce you to Hazel as. You will not do that, Will announced, pulling Nico closer by the waist. You will not be introducing me as such. Nico leaned into his chest, his hands resting on Will's chest. But what else shall I introduce you as, sweet tums? How about your boyfriend, Will Solace? Will nodded seriously. I think that would be perfect, actually. Nico grinned. And if she asks how we met? I'm not much of a liar, Will admitted. Good thing I'm a good enough liar for the both of us, then. Will cocked his head to the side. But do you really want to lie to your sister? He raised his eyebrows and grinned. Or are you just embarrassed of how we met? I'm not embarrassed, Nico told him, his arms coming up to curl around Will's neck. I'm very proud of my kidnapping skills, thank you very much. So what is it? Will questioned, leaning into Nico's touch. Nico's touch, he had noticed, was like the touch of a feather, light and smooth, but as noticeable and just as important as the rough, wet beat of his heart. It was absolutely, magnificently addicting. Nico tilted his head back, and his hair fell back in a soft curtain around his shoulders. It's just, I kidnapped you, Will, because I was too scared to seek you out, like legally. Borrowed me, Will reminded him. Borrowed you, Nico accepted. I borrowed you from a dark parking lot in the middle of the night. Will shrugged. I'm sure people have met in weirder ways. How did Frank and Hazel meet? Nico gave him a long look. Hazel was lifeguarding and saved Frank from whirlpool about a year ago. They've been dating ever since. Will thought about that for a moment. That kind of sounds like a fairy tale, he finally admitted. Nico threw his hands up. I know, but seriously, how does that sound? I'd rather kidnap someone than talk to her about my problems. Nico's head fell forward. That'll hurt her feelings and stuff. She pretended it won't, but it totally will. Will processed that, and as much as he didn't like lying, it made sense. I still think you should tell her the truth. She'd be more hurt by a lie, and it's always good to hear loved ones is seeking self-help. It might even help her cool off on the worry. Maybe, Nico pulled away. I guess. I don't know. It's okay. Will smiled, mostly just to reassure Nico. You still got a few hours. How about we finish up these cookies? Nico sighed, but it was with a grin. Sounds good, sugar buns. Will you stop with the pet nicknames? Will laughed, not even managing to convince himself that he didn't enjoy the silly little names Nico oh so casually bestowed upon him. Nico leaned forward to peek at the cookie mix as Will started spooning it out onto the metal trays. How else am I supposed to express my sugary sweet love to you? Go write about it in your diary, Angelo, Will teased, his heart speeding up a bit. Will leaned over his shoulder, just in time to see Nico stick his tongue out like a toddler. If anyone keeps a diary, it's you, Solace. Always talking about your feelings and stuff. Wouldn't you love to read my diary? Nico froze for a moment before speaking slowly. You don't keep a diary. Will casually shrugged. Maybe I do. There was a silence, and Will bit his cheek to keep himself from laughing. He slid the pans into the oven before setting the timer, secretly enjoying the silence Nico was shocked into. And that's where I'll leave it. I'm sorry, we'll have to split this into part 1 and part 2. You could probably tell just by listening to it, I filmed this over multiple days. So the next one will come out soon, hopefully. Life sort of hit. We had to put my cat down. So that wasn't very nice at all. And I'm really sorry if you could hear my really bad voice and my horrible lip smacking. I don't know how to describe it. But, I mean, you listened all the way, so thank you so much, and your continued support puts a smile on my face. Make sure if you enjoyed the fic so far, please go on to AO3 and give the author Rosyredlipstick kudos. I'm sure they would very much appreciate it, and I'll hope to see you in the next one.